Slept On Cinema is sponsored by Training Ties, the ultimate shoe tying tool. If you know someone who's struggling with shoe tying for any reason, Training Ties is the perfect solution. In the battle between Freddy and Jason, it's the audience who loses.
The script faithfully wallows in cliches so ridiculous that they border on scary movie territory.
Freddy and Jason could use some new blood.
A dull, brainless novelty that makes more sense as a TV sweeps stunt.
The clash between the two iconic killers is far from relevant. It's just an excuse for drinking beers and laughing with a movie in the background.
Anyone at a fan convention will tell you that Freddy vs. Jason had the potential to be a horror classic. Unfortunately, it ended up as just another slasher flick.
If you can convince a theater manager or lowly high school corn monkey to let you into the final half hour for a few bucks, you won't be disappointed. But that's the only part worth seeing.
Welcome to this week's episode of Slept On Cinema. I'm your host, Stan Steamer.
I'm Grove Street.
For those unfamiliar with this podcast, we only review movies that are below 50% on Rotten Tomatoes for both the critics and audience score. But these are movies that are actually good and have been slept on by everybody. We set the podcast up so that the first half is spoiler-free. You can hang out, listen to us chat about the movie. We take a break. You can go watch the movie and then come back and dig into what we just watched. This week, very excited to get into this. We are digging into Freddy vs. Jason.
So excited to do this. This has been on our list for a while. I think this is one of the first movies we had on our list because I was so excited when it came out back in, was it 2003?
2003, yeah.
2003, and it was a long time coming. It had been alluded to for years, and it was just sort of like a culmination of rumors and studio mishaps, and then it finally happened. So I was so excited to see this movie at the time. I remember seeing it in the theater.
I had no idea this was poorly reviewed.
It doesn't make sense watching it 20 years later how it's poorly. It still holds up.
Definitely. This movie could come out today and still kill.
Yeah, minus maybe some of the music, but aside from that, everything else holds up. I remember seeing this in the theater, and me and two other buddies set an over-under on kills. I think we set it for 8 or 8.5, I think. And I took the over, and there's one scene that sort of makes sure that the over hits.
Yeah, I think that was a pretty safe over bet in a movie like this.
Some of those other ones, though, some of the Freddy ones and Jason ones, is only like 6 kids.
That's true. That's true. This feels like a very safe bet.
Yeah, definitely. When they get together, of course, there's going to be more carnage. But just, this movie's also just kind of what we're about. There's just, if you're at this movie, you're already ready to have some fun. You're hopefully not trying to pick some nits and say things are unreal or look at some plot holes or lack of development. You're there to enjoy the movie and see these two icons of terror face off.
Yeah, this is perfect for us, as you said. It's a movie for people who like watching movies. Movie that people who liked watching two different epic franchises, some of the greatest horror franchises of all time, coming together and just going at it. Like what more could you possibly want?
I didn't know if I should ask this now or later on, but are you team Freddy or team Jason coming into this movie?
It's interesting. Growing up, I feel like I was more into the Friday the 13th movies. I think I had the original on VHS. I didn't have any of the other ones on tape, but I had that one on VHS, so I watched that a lot. And I just got more into those movies. I didn't actually see any of the Nightmare on Elm Streets until much later. So I sort of have that background that I had going. But when I watched rewatched the whole series for both of them again recently, I kind of started to tilt more into the Nightmare on Elm Street side just because I don't know, it seemed like they had a little bit more, each movie was a little bit more interesting and was a little bit more cerebral. But I think with my gut, I'm still a Jason guy.
Yep. I couldn't have said any better. I had the same sort of youth where I grew up with the Jason movies, and then I didn't see the Nightmare on Elm Street. I saw the first one, but I didn't catch many of the other ones until maybe, my later teens and 20s or whatever. And they're really good. They're really out there and they really go for it. And some of them can be very, very strange. And it probably has some of the better kills in the Nightmare on Elm Street series, whether it be the Roach Motel or a number of other like crazy kills from the Nightmare on Elm Street series. But I'm always just on Jason's side. Freddy's just awful. And I can always kind of see Jason's point. He just wants his camp left alone. Everyone was a jerk to him when he was a human. Can everyone just go away and stop partying around him?
Yeah, there's really no redeeming qualities to Freddy.
Yeah, and he gets even worse in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, but that's part of the brilliant aspect of it, right? He's just pure evil.
All right, let's get to the rotten premise. Two horror icons face off in this supernatural movie. Disfigured serial killer Freddy Krueger, who attacks his victims in their dreams, has lost much of his power since citizens of his town have become less afraid of him. Enlisting the help of fellow violent murderer Jason Voorhees, Freddy orchestrates a new killing spree. However, when the hockey mask wearing psychopath won't stop chopping up Freddy's intended victims, the two ghouls start to battle each other. Critics, 41%, audience score, 50%, right on the line.
Just made it. So glad it did, because this was a lot of fun to watch. So some of the background here, this came out August 15, 2003. And like a lot of the other movies we've done on this show, it actually did quite well. It opened number one. It had over $36 million on its first weekend and actually held that number one spot for 2 weeks until dethroned by a podcast favorite, Jeepers Creepers 2 was the only thing that could knock it off, which nice. I get that. That makes sense. It ended up making over $116 million worldwide on a budget of about $25 million. So once again, a lot of people went to see this. It made everyone a lot of money, but for whatever reason, just didn't quite connect with critics and audiences. It's a bit of it's perplexing.
It was the highest grossing movie in either one of the series franchises.
That's crazy.
Crazy. The best performing movie in either one of the franchises, and somehow it didn't lead to more.
Getting into what you alluded to before with the background of the whispers of this movie getting made for years, it's an interesting story, and I think it winds its way through Hollywood and ends up not being made until 2003. But both franchises had a terrific run in the 80s. Back in the late 80s, there was interest in bringing the two of them, these two horror icons, together towards the end of the decade, but they just couldn't get it done. So I think part of the issue was that two different film studios owned the rights to the characters. So Paramount owned Friday the 13th, New Line owned Nightmare on Elm Street. In 1987, Paramount tried to license the Nightmare on Elm Street rights. But at that point, Nightmare on Elm Street was sort of more popular than the Friday the 13th movies. And Nightmare on Elm Street folks didn't really feel comfortable relinquishing control over the characters and the story. So they couldn't get together. Paramount then decides to make Jason Takes Manhattan instead, which is probably the worst film in the franchise.
Oh, no. I think Jason Goes to Hell has got to be the worst. Followed by Manhattan, of course.
Anyhow, so after that comes out, the rights for Friday the 13th reverted back to the original producers. They then sell those rights to New Line. So at that point in 1989, New Line has the rights to both Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street. And we're thinking, this could be it. This could finally happen. This is great. New Line makes Jason Goes to Hell, your least favorite movie, in 1993. But they basically use it as a way of teeing up Freddy vs. Jason. At the end of the film, you see the Freddy Krueger glove come up and rip down the Jason mask. You're like, all right, buckle up. Here we go. Let's do this. But then horror legend Wes Craven comes back into the picture. Obviously, he's the creator of Nightmare on Elm Street. He hadn't been involved in some of the more recent films, but he comes in and says, I want to do the film Wes Craven's New Nightmare, which is one of my favorite horror movies. If anyone hasn't seen that, you should stop listening to us, go watch that, and then come back and listen to us right after that.
That movie does not qualify for a podcast.
It does not qualify. So they make that. It gets sidetracked a bit. Then they sort of turn attention back here to the meetup. 17 scripts end up getting submitted for this movie. So they didn't really know what direction to take. Took a long time to figure out how to do this. Enough time passes while they're figuring all this out that they decide they need to do another Friday the 13th movie to get interest back in this character. So they do Jason X, Jason's in Space.
Phenomenal movie.
Great movie. And then they finally get things together in 2003 and say, now's the time to do it. And they came out with this great movie, which ended up being the end of both original series. So, I mean, they both had sort of reboots that came out after this, but this was really the conclusion of two of the greatest franchises of all time.
Let's get to Bolos.
Let's do it.
All right. Be on the lookout. Be on the lookout for a mouthful of blood.
I'm going to follow that up with just be on the lookout for blood in general. There is so much blood in this movie. Perfect for the genre. And the blood budget must have been just, it cost $25 million. Half of that had to be on blood.
I'll add a third layer. Watch out for blood getting on the camera.
Draws you right in.
Yep.
I will say be on the lookout, Bolo, for a coffee machine. Not a coffee maker, but a coffee machine.
Yep, that's good. Bolo, a perfectly timed police detail.
Great point of this movie. I love that. I laughed out loud when that happened. I'm going to say Bolo, and this comes up in a number of the Nightmare on Elm Street, I guess all of them. Jumping rope. Somehow takes a simple thing and becomes the creepiest thing.
Terrifying. Bolo, a fart.
I'll stay on the sounds there. I will say Bolo pinball machine sounds.
Oh, yep. I had that one too. Great one. Bolo prior movie callbacks. So if you like, I'll just give one example, Hypnosil. And there's a few others like it. So if you're a fan of both franchises, you'll get a little treat here and there.
Yeah, it is a great thing to watch when you're familiar with all the prior films. You just get to pat yourself on the back all throughout the movie. I'm going to say Bolo, and this might be one of the most, I don't even know if this is a cameo, but this is just a crazy series of events. Bolo, Evangeline Lilly, the actress from Lost. It's very fleeting. She is an extra in this movie. You see her for maybe 1 second. And this is 1 year before Lost comes out. She goes from being an extra in Freddy vs. Jason to being one of the most famous people on earth in one of the most popular TV shows at the time.
Wow.
In 1 year's time.
I could have used this Bolo segment before I watched it for the 50th time. Bolo rain. It's very wet out.
There's a lot of water in this movie. I will say Bolo, and this is one my wife pointed out, KRGR, the TV station. You had a little clip of TV news, and it's KRGR. Great little nugget. Krueger.
Good, yeah, it's a good nugget. Bolo, playing game of I Got Your Nose.
Classic game. I'm going to say Bolo microfilm. I love whenever microfilm shows up in a movie, and it plays an important role here.
Always interesting. Bolo sweaters with lines across the chest, like Aeropostale, Abercrombie, Gap in the early 2000s. You know exactly when this was made from the clothes the guys are wearing.
Yes, I had those clothes.
Yeah, I threw some of them out recently.
I'm going to say Bolo killing someone with their own arm.
Great one. Bolo, older looking high school kids.
It's just we're older then, I guess.
I guess so.
I'm going to say Bolo, George W. Bush.
Nice. I have one more here. Bolo, mouth-to-mouth resuscitation.
And I will do, following up on that, I guess my last one. Bolo, the one time somebody's glad to have asthma.
He has asthma. It's a great one. Great one to finish with. Let's get with what drink to pair with this movie. I'm going to go first because it wasn't that creative, and I'll just let you finish off. But I've never had it, but it's brought up in the movie. Everclear. I know it was rumored to be, super alcoholic, and you're only supposed to use it as like a mixer. But I do remember parties and stuff where other people were having Everclear, and it seems to come up a bit in this movie.
Yes, and I think we're on the same page here because my drink does involve Everclear.
Oh, wow.
So my drink is a flaming Dr. Pepper. Now, if you don't know what this is, part of what makes this the perfect drink to pair with this movie is the sequence of events that you have to engage in to drink this drink. So it's amaretto with a layer of Everclear on top. You light that Everclear up, get the flame going, then you drop it into a beer to extinguish the flame, and then chug the beer with the Everclear and amaretto in it. So I will say this is the perfect drink to pair with the movie, and I would say wait to have this until you're watching the movie and you will know the exact right time.
Yeah,
you'll know the exact right time to drink it.
If you're not sure when to drink it, it's not the right time, then you'll know.
You will not be mistaken.
That may be the best drink to pair with the movie we've done yet. That's perfect. All right. Well, this is your chance here to go rewatch the movie if you've seen it, or watch it for the first time and enjoy. I'm sure you will.
Warn your friends. Warn everyone.
Welcome to my nightmare.
We're not safe awake or asleep.
Why won't you die? Freddy versus Jason.
Place your bets.
Welcome back. Slept On Cinema is brought to you by Training Ties, the ultimate shoe tying tool. If you know anyone who's struggling with shoe tying, Training Ties is the perfect solution. Or if you know anyone who just doesn't like tying their shoes, Training Ties keeps shoes tied all day long. Say no to Velcro and yes to independence with Training Ties. What a ton of fun that was. I was so excited to watch it. And by the way, if you probably already know, but it's free on Netflix right now.
That movie was so fun. It just has everything you want in a horror movie. I have very few critiques, if any, of this film. It was just a great
I've got
time.
none. It's just a movie to sit back and enjoy rather than critique from me. So let's get right to the draft.
Let's do it. I'm going to take with the first overall here, just the whole worlds colliding mashup concept. Why not do it? This was kind of ahead of its time, I think, because like now you have all these Marvel cinematic universes, but here you had two entirely independent universes that had gone for several movies each, and they're sort of coming out of this same era. They have elements that are the same, but yet they're very different films. Why not bring them together? They just go for it, and it's fantastic. It's so much fun. It's what every fan wanted. They finally just did it for us.
Yep.
And it came out perfectly.
It's what every horror fan wanted, and they weren't quite sure, probably I wasn't at the time, how they would do it. But then the way they did it, it was great having like one afraid of water, one afraid of fire, one is the stoic bulldozer who always comes at you like Jason does, and the other one has all the one-liners and little quips and the jokes and the grand scheme. They just work so well together.
They played off of each other perfectly, right? And I think their relationship was also great. How they did it was like first they're on this sort of same team, sort of, and then they are up against each other, because you do going into it, like, how do we get these guys on opposite sides? Because they're both evil, which usually you'd think, oh, they're going to be on the same side here. But this really, in a creative way, gets them facing off for the ultimate showdown.
Absolutely, that's a great pick. I just in the nerd of me, because I went as him for like 5 straight Halloweens as a kid. So I'm going to take Jason. Just seeing Jason take on Freddy and always just being the same thing that everyone has ever felt about Jason in a movie. Just like, why won't you die? Just stop it and just stop coming at me. Just, can you get distracted by something or get so injured where you can't come at me? And just like Freddy tries to kill him in his dreams. He finds his weakness in water. He gets pulled out and does everything imaginable to him, pokes out his eyes and cuts off his fingers. And he's just unrelenting. And I just absolutely love that about Jason. There's no explanation needed. He does it enough in like his gait and just a little head turn here and there where you kind of get where he's coming from. I'm just going to say, just as the nerd of me, I'm taking Jason in this movie. I really, really enjoyed him. And it was weird because initially I was a little skeptical because they got rid of Kane Hodder, one of the better Jasons, and they took his stunt double from the Jason Takes Manhattan because he was 6'5" or 6'7". He was just a couple inches taller than Kane Hodder, even though Kane was awesome. They just wanted to have that size difference between like the 5'8" Robert Englund and the huge Jason. And I'm kind of glad they did. I mean, I love Kane Hodder and he had a great role in the series, but it was really cool to see that size difference.
It was. It worked perfectly. I think that, Jason's this like physical, unrelenting presence of evil. Freddy's this sort of smaller, sprightlier, more creative, totally different side of evil. And having that juxtaposition, I think, was really important for just how the whole movie worked together.
Yeah, and they kind of did that with some of the kills too. Like Jason is just pretty, like, he'll stab a bunch of people in the stomach and move along. He doesn't need some grand show. And Freddy Krueger's trying to like kill you with your worst fear all the time and just draw it out and make you horrified before it even happens and scream at you while it's happening. And I just thought it was a great way to, like, even though they were both killing people in the movie, it was great that how they separated how they both killed somebody.
Yeah. And I heard that, I guess, obviously the makeup for both Freddy and Jason in this took hours and hours and hours to prepare. And one little anecdote I heard from this was that the actor playing Jason, Ken Kirzinger, so he had to get some sort of dental procedure done on like an emergency basis and didn't have time to take the makeup off because I guess he had to go back to the set, whatever it was. So he went to this dentist office in his Friday the 13th makeup and like had this whole dental procedure done with it all on, which is just insane.
Well,
like, you imagine you're sitting in the waiting room for your, like, getting your cavities filled, and then Jason walks in.
Yeah, that's terrifying. And hopefully it wasn't the same teeth in reality that he had when Kelly Rowland was trying to give him mouth to mouth.
Yeah, it seems like he needed quite a bit of dental work.
Yeah. My second pick, I got to go with the rave scene. I feel like that's when the movie truly begins. That cornfield rave scene is just like a movie. It's fine. The movie before that, it's doing all the character development and everything else and setting up the teens, just like most of the time happens in those movies. But then once that rave kicks in, the movie just goes to another gear. I found myself, I watched this a number of times, and there was a couple times I would just like, I'll just start right from that rave scene.
That's a great pick. It also, I mean, that rave, obviously, until things devolve, looks awesome. That looks so fun.
I was nervous drinking in the woods with when a fifth person would show up. I can't imagine being in high school and being at that and figuring everything's going to work out fine.
Right. Yeah. It seems like maybe just in like the middle of the country, things are just different.
I guess so. Yeah, that's true.
Nope. Just kids being kids.
Because it's in Springwood, Ohio. I guess that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. For my second pick, I'm going to take the dream worlds. So all the dreamscapes and these just nightmarish places that Freddy creates for everyone. I thought those were all, the colors in them were really great. They were all terrifying in unique ways. They didn't totally have to make sense, like we talked about before with the pinball sounds. So I know some people were really just like, oh, this is the stupidest thing ever. I'm kind of like, it's a dream. That's like part of this. It doesn't have to make sense. If you go back and look at whatever dream you had yesterday, it's like, yeah, of course it didn't make sense. It's a dream. And like weird stuff happens in dreams, and it can be terrifying.
And it's pretty aligned with the sort of the dream kills of the history of the franchise. Some of them get really weird.
Yep.
It's because it's a dream. It's fine. This is not based in reality. He loses both of his arms right before that. And it's like, as always, you can't hurt me. This is a dream. Your dream.
It's great. And it's like, they do a good job at making these dreams interesting too. So it's sort of like, I mean, everybody knows the 1 million least interesting stories of all time all begin with, let me tell you about this dream I had last night.
Yeah.
The minute someone says that, you're just like, I could not care less about whatever come out.
And now I'm going to question hanging out with you going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just like, I like, why are you even talking? Like, please leave. Yet they make all these
bad flight after that. I want to hear about it.
Yeah. But yet they make these dreams just fantastic. And I never had that feeling watching this.
Yeah, and they were like tailored to each person too. It's not just like going into Freddy's dream world. Each one is unique to the individual and their fears. Right. It's pretty great.
Right. My third pick, I'm going to take Monica Keena, who was the actress that played Laurie. I'd never seen her in anything else, which kind of shocks me because she was so good in this. There were times, when Freddy or Jason wasn't on the screen and she was just carrying whole portions of this movie, and she was really convincing being scared. She had this whole relationship with her dad that was like complicated, and she handled that really well. I was blown away by the performance.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I don't know her from anything else, but she's just like the perfect final girl.
Yeah, she should have had a much longer career. Maybe she still will. There's still time.
Right, she just have like an amazing horror career at the very least, because I thought, to play the role like she did, I would imagine scripture being thrown at her afterwards.
Very curious what happened there.
My third pick, I'm going to go with the music. I thought they did a great job of doing like the Nightmare on Elm Street, whether it be like that hit that noise or the Friday the 13th, and you like they kept like battling each other. So when one would have the upper hand, you'd hear their music. And then even at the end, they played like a couple different times, their music going back and forth. So you were left not knowing, who actually won the battle. But they just really timed the main music from each one of their franchises very, very well in this. And they used it as like a weapon to know who had the upper hand, which is awesome.
That's a great call. Yeah, it's not quite the music. It's almost like the themes or something.
Yep, exactly. And let's see, for sleepers, this was only new to like 2 days ago, but I guess you saw it too, but I had read about all these deleted scenes and all the editing process and how they had filmed one ending for the movie and the audience didn't like it. Well, they had to reshoot the whole ending because the audience was left confused and unsure. So there's like a YouTube clip of 13 minutes of scenes that were edited out from this movie, including like the beginning. It was a little off. It was fine, but like you'd have the girl in the dock and she took her shirt off and she ran in the water. There was no backstory and there wasn't really needed. But if you go back and watch the deleted scene of the opening, it is so different.
Yeah, I watched all those too. It was fun to see some of the elements that sort of explain a little bit more about the story. It was pretty good.
Yeah, it explains a little bit more, but you also realize like that wasn't really necessary on the ones some of the ones they cut. It was cool to go watch some of the scenes if you were like nerding out, but you couldn't understand why they cut it too, because the movie length is kind of perfect. Sometimes we harp on that in our changes to come up.
I agree. This was a great movie to watch over and over again. I do think that they did a good job also of mixing up how much they very clearly explain to you in terms of backstory. Like when you're in the first part of the movie, there's quite a bit of explanation from Freddy about the background there. But then there's also quite a bit of having to piece things together about what's transpired in this town to get them to the point where people have forgotten about Freddy. And you're sort of left to unravel that as the movie's going. It's just a nice combo, the nice way that they did it.
If you were the town, do you have a problem with their approach? Stuffing everyone in the asylum who knows about it and not letting anyone say Krueger, because the moment they do, all this was going to happen.
It's one of those things that it's, you're not going to be popular for taking that move, but you kind of have to do it. I mean, they've treated it like a disease. These people had a disease and we had to quarantine them. I don't really know how else you effectively combat this.
No, it's kind of like the hamster dam from The Wire. You read about like, oh my God, they're letting people do that over there. They're like, yes, they are, but for the greater good.
Exactly. Sometimes you got to make tough calls when you're in charge.
Exactly.
I am going to take for my sleeper pick, and this was brought up in one of your bolos from earlier, but that I just love that scene right in the beginning after the first kill where Trey gets just killed in the house and all the kids are running out of the house. One's just in a towel, covered in blood. They're all screaming, clearly terrified. The very timely cop rolls up and just says, "You kids need assistance?" in the most casual way. And they just yell back, "What the fuck do you think?"
Like, phenomenal. Yep.
Just such a perfect reaction to that totally insane question. I loved it. I just love that scene.
Just one of those small towns that constantly has a police detail apparently going down the street.
Well, and apparently constantly has kids screaming and running out of houses.
Right.
Like, no big deal.
That's a great one. All right, let's get to our superlative for this movie. We've done this before, but I think this warranted doing again. Our favorite kill from the movie. I've got a couple lined up, so why don't you go ahead?
See, I think for me, there are a number of honorable mentions, but there is one clear winner. It is head and shoulders above all other deaths here. It's Gib getting impaled by Jason.
We both have the same one. Yep.
It's hands down. It is just everything about it, right? It's the turning point in the movie, as you talked about with the rave. Like the rave is setting up this one very important and crucial moment of the film. Freddy is haunting this girl. He's getting her as terrified as he possibly can get her in this nightmare. He's about to go in for the kill. All of a sudden, just like blood sprays out from her chest all over Freddy's face. And at first you're a little unclear about what just happened, but then the pieces fall together. Jason has already taken care of this. And it's an obvious turning point. It's suddenly Freddy realizes what he's unleashed and that he has no control over this power that is Jason. And on top of that, you also the guy, the rapey glow stick guy.
The rapey raver. Yep.
Just as an added bonus.
And the added bonus too of how far he got flung. That pole, just a mile. Like you said, it was cool how that kind of like changed the path of this movie. That's when Freddy realized that he cannot control this guy. He ends up throwing that little tantrum about she's mine. And then it wasn't about like being known anymore. It was about like, I need my kills. You are doing too much.
I wonder if this is how it happened, but I feel after watching the movie, like someone had that idea for that kill, and then they built the whole movie around it.
Perfect. We've seen movies be built around less with Lake Placid, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that movie, that scene alone is enough to build a movie. I mean, that was my favorite kill too. But I thought Trey, the jerk boyfriend in the beginning, it was great with the original kill because he was just such a jerk. Like he didn't want her to smoke. Yep. It was bad for her health or anything. He didn't want her to smoke because it made her mouth taste bad. And he was just annoyed. Afterwards, he wouldn't like to be touched. It was just like all the worst things. He's a cocksmith. Only out there caring, as you explained to me before we talked, only out there caring about having sex and nothing else. I'm just being a jerk to people. But then the back-breaking bed part where he let out that little at the end.
So good. It was so good. It was like kind of an emasculating kill too.
Yes.
And it showed you how incredibly strong Jason was just with that one little scene. Because like that wasn't just a regular fold-up bed. Like that was a bed. He just smushed him.
It was a great smush kill.
Yeah, that was a great one. And so much blood. Once again, just
so much blood.
Getting you into the movie right off the bat. You know exactly what you're dealing with.
All right, we got to go down some of the more honorable mentions here. Why not?
Yeah, I mean, there was Freeberg getting cut in half. I think anytime someone is just a clean cut in half, that's just a great move.
Linderman just getting tossed into that little spike and then trying to be a hero for a little bit there. The deleted scene, I think he did get a kiss from Kelly Rowland before she took off.
Good for him.
Nice.
Yeah.
That was nice for him standing up for himself for a minute. The cop gets it bad, too. He just gets electrocuted and his face slammed through a number of things and then through a door or through a window as well.
The awkward kill of Kia, which has that incredibly uncomfortable moment right before where Freddy goes, "How sweet, dark meat," which is by far the most cringeworthy moment of this entire movie, which is kind of shocking because it's a movie where people are constantly getting killed. One of the characters kills small children. That's what he's known for. But by far the cringiest moment is this racist comment that just slips in for no apparent reason.
That did come out of nowhere. And then she kind of responded too with a little cringeworthy response after that about his knives.
Yep.
But yeah, that was a great kill scene. It was cool seeing her in that movie. I kind of forgot when it goes a little while that Kelly Rowland was actually in that movie. Probably a peak of her, not a peak, but a high moment of her career.
Oh, yeah.
The kill in the beginning too, just with the dream world kill of the girl from the dock, I thought was awesome.
Yep. Great opening.
Backing up against the tree. Oh, is that Jason? No. Perfect.
Just all around. All of them were just great. But
all right, this is going to be tough, but what's one change to be a blockbuster?
Mine is so minimal, and it was really the only thing that I was looking back at the movie. I was just like, yeah, I could do without that. And it was the like heavy metal score that was peppered in throughout the movie and at the credits and at sort of some of the opening. And I know that was sort of popular at the time, and especially with this genre of film, it's just like it very much puts you in the early 2000s. But that was kind of the only piece that we talked about this before. The only piece that kind of felt a little dated too, watching it now. But I don't know. That's not my style of music, and it felt a little out of place, and I could just give me something a little more classic, bring it back to the 80s a little bit more. I think I would have enjoyed that a little bit more. Yeah,
I agree. And even some of the music they got, like it's all sounded like Linkin Parky, but then they didn't ever have like the main actual song, the main band sing it. It's something like watching an NFL game and they have like an odd riff of like an old 80s rock song, and it's not the actual song, but it's kind of close.
Yep.
So they did like songs that sounded like bands at the time.
Yeah. Well, when they spent so much money on blood, they ran out of money for the music.
I could have got. I mean, my nitpick is just maybe getting to the Jason versus Freddy stuff a little bit sooner. It's like 35 minutes in before the rave scene, and I think we could have done that a little bit earlier. But it's a huge nitpick. It's no problem at all. All right. Do you have any spin-off ideas?
I got a few. I think my first one, it's not quite a spin-off, but maybe a twist, especially since this was the last movie in this franchise. And it did go back and forth when you're like, who's going to come out on top, Freddy or Jason? What if they had multiple endings and sometimes Freddy won, sometimes Jason won, and you go into the movie theater not knowing which ending you're going to get? Whoa. So you could go and watch this a bunch of times. I don't know why this isn't a thing. This seems like something people should do if you're trying to sell movie tickets. Go in, you're like, well, I hope Jason wins his time, or I hope Freddy wins his time, or maybe you even have little voting buttons and you see how many people want what, and there you go.
Yeah, and afterwards you get to talk to other people like who saw the movie. Which one did you get? Oh, I got the one where Freddy wins this way. I got the one how Jason won that way. Oh, that's such a great idea.
You could have a dozen different endings. It doesn't take that much time to film them. And boom, I would go to watch this probably 12 times. It would take me more than 12 times. So I'd want to see them all.
Yeah, I can't believe that doesn't exist yet.
Right? Why is that not a thing?
It should absolutely be a thing. Great idea. I'll get mine in here before you say your other ones. I think you'll like this one. One of the original written endings, instead of having that dream moment where they get out of the water and, Jason's holding Freddy's head, they have Jason and Freddy battling in hell when Pinhead comes in from the Hellraiser series and says, "Gentlemen, what seems to be the problem?" And then the chains of hell or whatever that always happens in the Hellraiser series attaches to them. And then both Freddy and Jason have to team up in sort of a buddy horror movie to take on the Cenobites, as well as a number of other horror movie franchise legends down in hell to get back to Elm Street and to get back to Crystal Lake.
I mean, it would be great. And it would have been great if they could have woven that into the original ending. Would have been just fantastic. Pinhead's one of the greatest characters in that genre of film. He's just fantastic. I think that would be awesome.
Yep. So
yeah, I had that. That's an obvious spinoff. The only other, and this kind of takes it in a different direction, but maybe sort of the same thing about bringing in different classic characters. What if you bring in the characters from Friday? Take this in a different direction. I get it's going way off script, but you get Craig, Smokey, Debo, get them in there facing off against Freddy and Jason. See what happens.
It's going to be a very different story than a bunch of white kids on Elm Street dealing with the problem. Right?
It's a story that needs to be told.
It does need to be told. Yeah, that's a great one. I'll just finish off, I guess, with the deleted scene at the end of the original movie that they filmed had Laurie and Will, like they were having, sex for the first time after celebrating the death of the two horror icons, and it gets a little bit rough, and it turns out that it's not actually Will, it's a dream of Laurie, and it's Freddy Krueger, and Laurie ends up getting killed at the end of the movie. And which is kind of like this is why that would be the starting point of the next movie. So use the deleted scene that didn't happen to start off the next movie, which is basically them just fighting again. But all those, like, not all of them, but most of those Nightmare on Elm Streets, the final girl from one would be one of the first victims in the next one. So why not just let's kill off Laurie, let's kill off Will. Maybe Jason can go kill Will somewhere. Laurie's dead, and now we move along to the next group of kids.
Yeah, you got a great formula. Why mess with it?
Exactly. All right, so that was awesome. I'm glad we finally got a chance to do that. Do you want to go into what movie we have next?
Yeah, we are going to jump into Hollow Man, which is one of my favorite films. I've seen this a number of times. Once again, I'm shocked that this qualifies, but it's sort of a classic, almost a genre of sort of the Invisible Man. There's been a number of movies.
We can say Invisible Man?
Invisible Man. And I think this is a fun trip into that genre. So can't wait to really dive into it next week.
Yeah, I can't wait either. I saw that in the theater, and when you brought that up earlier, I checked out on Rotten Tomatoes what it was. I forgot, and I think it's under 30% somehow in both categories, which is just mind-boggling.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
All right, that was a lot of fun, and we'll We'll catch you next episode.
Yeah, later.
Later.